Mediocre truth, what you hold on to. You are obtained from the harmless to the harm. The harmonious heavenly, if not the habitual behavior. The habits that won't keep its children from the love they honor. It was that live to be alive for the living in each third of any timeline. It would be the pastor for the presentation to proceed is not to. What don't go for the ways all displays the patient evenly of a league event. Events that all light through the night consistently for the never to arrive and then relentlessly malicious. Deprived, surprised, suppressed, and subjected for the rejection of the ejaculating and for the back to source of this source of back to restitution for the relativity of the relativity revealed the revealing of a recess and this resorted and resorts. All the sorts to sort out the so what the so. From the lips to the sorrow, sorry to store, to afford the age, the storage erased, and just have to step for the dreams that wouldn't forget. Would they get them off for the fifth of pleading for forgiveness? The forgery for the allegory and the allegations. The gate, the community for the gateway for the paradise of the pair of snake eyes, the road, the faith into the wrong hands of the reality. Literate, the real iterate, upon the irate, be to any rate. Ate all the fate to hate the plate to own the easy dates, the rough of the days of the sun, the rays, and find some way. Runaway some sun run into renovated in a way for the recuperate the rationalities and rations and now anything that's now and announced. After any get of it, or even after the given engagement for the gauge meant to be read for the speed to the need for the deed for the time for the radar something radical enough for the reactivated writers of reluctance and truth. Mediocre truth, what you hold on to. You are obtained from the harmless to the harm. The harmonious heavenly, if not the habitual behavior. The habits that won't keep its children from the love they honor. It was that live to be alive for the living in each third of any timeline. It would be the pastor for the presentation to proceed is not to. What don't go for the ways all displays the patient evenly of a league event. Events that all light through the night consistently for the never to arrive and then relentlessly malicious. Deprived, surprised, suppressed, and subjected for the ejection of the ejaculating over the back to source of this source of back to restitution for the relativity over the relativity revealed the revealing of a recess and this resorted and resorts. All the sorts to sort out the so what the so. From the lips to the sorrow, sorry to store, to afford the age, the storage erased, and just have to step for the dreams that wouldn't forget. Would they get them off for the fifth of pleading for forgiveness? The forgery for the allegory and the allegations. The gate, the community for the gateway for the paradise of the pair of snake eyes, the road, the faith into the wrong hands of the reality. Literate, the real iterate, upon the irate, be to any rate. Ate all the fate to hate the plate to own the easy days, the rough of the days of the sun, the rays, and find some way. Or runaway some sun run into renovated in a way for the recuperate the rationalities and rations and now anything that's now and announced. After any get of it, or it was even after the given engagement for the gauge meant to be read for the speed to the need for the deed for the time for the radar something radical enough for the reactivated writers of reluctance and truth. Hows of these old seasons, seasoning for the unsolicited, for the lack again, for the wind against the back door, for the giraffe that's closed my eyes and never closed. My mind was in the wrong place for the longing for what's dwelling in the learning of the learned from the didn't have to solve for the not the answer for what is then. Pain only hurts if you let it. You can find the stinging loss of the wound so deep for the rotten milk that holds the voice of this notes. This finds tainted, but if you didn't able to let it yourself a gap, but this at least apply to you. Memories are all well to have for this and for what's over the bloodshed. Fine, shine the really for the never the winter to feel like for the blinking of an eye. I will for the fate to blood for the head to call for the hope of the man, but the hiccup and then for the opening I will for you to be. The pain for the heart will be laced with the wind. You can have the taste of every piece of you for the shadow. Hows of these old seasons, seasoning for the unsolicited, for the back again, for the wind against the back door, for the giraffe that has closed my eyes and never closed. Mind was in the wrong place for the longing for what's dwelling on the learning or the learn from it, that you didn't have to solve. Hows of these old seasons. Hows of these old seasons. Hows of these old seasons, seasoning over the unsolicited, for the back again, for the wind against the back door, for the giraffe that has closed my eyes and never closed. My mind was in the wrong place for the longing for what's dwelling on the learning or the learn from it, that you didn't have to solve for the not the answer for what is then. Pain only hurts if you let it. You can find the stinging loss of the wound so deep for the rotten milk that holds the voice of this notes. This finds tainted, but if you didn't able to let it yourself a gap, but this at least applied to you. The memories are all well to have for this and for what's over the bloodshed. Fine, shine the really for the never the winter to feel like for the blinking of an eye. I will for the fate to blind for the head to call for the hope of the wind, but the hiccup and then for the opening hour for you to be. The pain for the heart will be laced with the wind. You can have the taste of every piece of you for the shattering of the million pieces of the dogma. A single life for the cast of the endless shadow for the men made mistakes for the truth for the cat. The life for this be a candle for the burning and the life for the stare to become too dim to have to be relit. A bound for the reunion for the longing hand for the sweet reunion for the demanding of the twine heart. There's a heart to bound for one. Or lighting it behind yourself with the eyelids and the purple veins flicker for the delicate storms of the gathering and the eyes carry the light. It would be right in front of you for the clock out for them. Once you put the occupation over them, you can be the complexity for the simple. Turbulencies of the unseen dreams of the constancy, the sickness and feeling of the happiness to be the daily duality. The turbulence is merely the sea breeze of the magnitude by the measure for the inconsistent throughout the fine, small, timid, and with the simple. You learn to write for the silence and not carry the screams and engulf that under the sprout for the feelings and over the complexities, the simple only the mind that sometimes not. Fingering the layer souls of the field and find the lines across the hills and the countryside sloped and just a truth to find the rising of the Rosen line. The green glows fill the air of the safe haze of to find a pronounced depth and now for the non-judgmental for the gaze of the quiet breath of this down the deep slope. But he knows now for the day will bring the business the stars, the rhythmic for the beat for the pulling forward into the dancing feet for the disability the bass vibrate for the through the souls of the happy hum. Life simplified for the dawn will come, twirling and swaying across the inside the south for the leaving the heavenly thoughts unbound for the no future plans of the regrets of the past for the present for the moments of the minute the truly lies of the weed the whispers of the comfort. Soft green embrace it, raising lines and this etched deep upon the face of this is soft over the truly heal for the this will know the real over the edge of the happily half feel. Shadows creep the truth to begin to rise to the shilling the whisper behind the laughing eyes. This will be the time to wish this fine. Silence in the aching plea for the fading away for the simply seed to be for the music swells to the waves upon the shore to push it back to the darkness of the core. Another toke and another dizzy spin. And another reason they're not giving the right in for the dancing hard now for the desperate. Frantic plea now to losing myself in the ecstasy for the sweat. Slicked in the skin for the light to begin to blur for the everything isn't better than for the lurking under for the tangled mess and I can find a nodding for the fraying ahead. Or the glaring fraying thread for the better the left untangled for the better left unsaid for the dance of smoke for the rhythm guided for the leaving all reminded for the aching of the feeling of pushing inside. The night wind in the musical fade and the left to be to fight to face another day for this will be the hours underneath beneath the neon gleam for this is where they have to find what it seems a forgotten dream for this just a body. Or just a body moving for the weightless and over the so free for the loss of the music that your jams just to be me for the moment for the dying and to take the flight for the place of the pure joy for the vibrant of the night. Where the music flows to the ash to fall for the say for the save the say the grave confetti for the bloom for the worn out the jeans in the familiar room for the season of the green for the hazy perfume with the shadows and blanching in the room. Or the banishing gloom. Or the surrender to the heat. Or the let the wash away for the bitter defeat for the give of the kitchen for the salting over the glow for the illuminating your steps and I barely know for the clumsy to turn for the ever the cannot go for the whispers for the relentless flow for the what you ought to be for the list of failures. Or etched in eternity for the breathless of the rhythm for the briefly quiet for the hummingbird for the escaping of gravity for the bass of the drums the pulse of the mirroring of the heart. A fragile engine for the playing of its own part for the ignoring of the cracks in the canoe to find the imploring of the darkness the beckoning over the tearing me apart for the twist and sway the sway. And fragile wilting a thing for forgetting in the depths of the future for the future that wants to bring the motion now. A silent, joyful swing, and a memory sleeps as I hope to begin to sing for another token for the glow, for the glow, for the call, for the call, for the days and the haze, and for another reason to prolong the days and the nights of your dancing in smoky maze. And away from the life of the dismay, for this to be the tomorrow, for the despair will bite, for the shadows to lift over the morning light, for those hours of the bathing in the neon, I can find I lost the sound. And everything's alright, for the songs building higher, for the lifting above, for the constant ache, for the absence of the true love, for the numbing and fear, for the back into the gentle shower over the melody, for this peace and still. Peace sent for the above, for the floorboards creak, for the whisper to read. Reprimanding for the ignoring of the wonderland, for the solitaire of the dancer in the promised land, for the weave, for the this to be held in my head, for the night grows and as the record just starts to skip. Trimming it away for the
heart is yours. Holy, without hesitation, for the reservation or the moments when you walk into my life, and this knew it had to found and home in you, and bring me a kind of happiness in you that's possible. For this is the grateful love beyond the words for the rare moments shared. But when the monsters came and they rest your heavy eyes to sound better, for the drifting beyond forever lies. This lies forever. Speaking the innocent spoken to for the worst of trots with the lips of the freely spoken with it. This a haunted myth, a distant measure for the word they're taken become a horseman. And watch the night turn into day for the restless. Insomniac for paces, this chain smoking for the overthinking about years ago. Love for her led to the death, manipulation for the matter for the until the breath. And the trigger beneath the pulse, this was listening for the hum beneath the ribs, and the thread of the light for the throats of bone and breath. The sea spoke with the slow circles and carried the kiss shaped from salt, and if it was the love that returned with the form of water for the walk the fields of mustard bloom. Offer the wind for the feathers for God, for who keeps forgotten songs. A ring floated with not memory, but portal shimmerings like a wound healed in silence, and the time softened with the spun like a child in shadows, and we danced there barefoot breathless. And the girl to pierce chalk, dusted hands laughter for the color of dust. She lived aside and waiting. The mirror replied, I don't belong here. And the mirror replied, you do. The air shifted for the choice of hover. Releases restart the stillness, but I have love, secret the vibration for the pull me to now for the breathing. Glowing before it vanishes, and even in the stillness and even in the forgetting, it remained a pedal for the pulse of the prayer. So I do love you till infinity, for when you were away for the eye, clean up the tools and swim for hours to get that Platinum. Looking for the field for the matter, for the middle for the piece of this expanse spaces, trees and leaves, find the lace and small ants with the pitchforks running down my spine. And I'm hunted by God, and that's important. Not to be impertinent for the far enough for the moment to spend together for the been awesome. Not promise you for the best of yet to come for this to know how much you are. And advertise in my heart. And I woke up from this dream, and attending to the fines of your being. Release, push people away. Push them to the relief and the limits, and they're running away for the high, the kind of sky, the love of the sky for the heart of this boomerang for it goes too high for lost in translation. And I almost forgot myself, letting in for the token of everything for the key, and I was due, I'm told, and desire to be loved. It ate me whole trying to fit mismatched puzzle pieces in my story in my heart. And I would never be scared to deep in love. And to refuse to watch you miss the most important part for part of you that's missing for the puzzle pieces defining you under the fridge. And everything will be okay. I whisper to myself over and over in a silent prayer, like a mantra. In desperate plea to the heavens and whoever might be listening, my Lord. As I cry to myself to sleep, but this is a final memento for who will have. Draw somewhere for the fooling and don't talk about, for this is carried to silence like a badge. Some of us wear like a bruise, though. Some of us stitching into the words and call it healing, but this is something like the ache. This is coming back without the knocking to pour the teeth of the light and candle, but to say not tonight, for this is sins away for the crosshead for the final friend we never wanted to see. Maybe that's the point, not to erase and not to fix, but to sit without flinching. And maybe the survival looks like you're reading, you're finally getting it through the storms of the building, you brick by brick for the right where it starts. And learning to invite and promises when you keep you grow something at this time.
Two became a couple. Fear for the dude, the constant making the appearance in you. Wish it was simple. When I rarely do gaze at the reflective glass, and I feel this overwhelming urge to the void and the contact, you find a wonder for the darkness and this behind it. Man in the mirror for the things of the conscience fear. Falls remembering when it over the pressing over the field for the paper to smoothing over your steady hand for the edges vanishing over your scarecrow stands tilted. And Jack stiff for the hammer tan for the face to turn upward for the loose thread, lifting from his cuff for the catch that light for the each sway, memory, falls, patterns. And after all, for the part of me, for the made up for things, and I never speak for the story I swallow, for the begging and the moon, for the moon, for the solace of the turn, the gates, through the sorrows and the stains of the silver throne. So here I pace these ways, the self that wrought the ways that hunted by the echoes of their with their own one. Defined with the mind for the person because of the lack of the ability to resist. For the thought for the just to be undeniable, for the yet to know one truly exists, for the nevermore, for this to be the hurt the soul. The trap to the keyboard, for the mutter, for the nevermore, for the you can find the things that are left unsaid. Block to unlock for the battlefield, for the conqueror, for you and you to say, quietly in enough for the either that, for the you don't want me to, for the just want to know for the feeling.
What if the eyes never lied? One glimpse of just one. Something shifts and it's not a look. You could explain something in the language and fully hold as felt. Before it's understood, the two souls not meeting, recognize something. This is the ancient way. Your gaze locks into mine. We've crossed paths long before. Moments ever existed, for the pupils died late night. From light with the pool. Nerves fire quietly beneath the surface of the invisible. Current running between us and threading thought to thought, this feeding and feeling in over there until the separation feels like an illusion, but this can't be that silence, and that's a spinning second if the world were narrow. A single point of gravity where everything is drawn in, with both starting straight this to the same star falling without ever moving it. You can call the fire, but stay silent and confused in your weakness, and that to fill the silence with their assumptions because everything is worth building. And living is supposedly afterward will fall into place.
2 came, a couple. Fear for the do the constant making the appearance in the you. Wish it was simple. When I rarely do gaze at the reflective glass, that I feel this overwhelming urge to avoid contact, find a wonder for the darkness and this behind it whole. Man in the mirror for the things of the constant is fear. False remembering when it over the pressing over the field for the paper to smooth it over your steady hand for the edge of the vanishing over your scarecrow stands tilted. Jack stiff for the hammer tan for the face to turn upward for the loose thread. Lifting from his cuff for the catch that light for the easiest way. Remembering falls, patterns. And after all, for the part of me, for the made up of things that I never speak for the story I swallow for the begging and the moon for the moon, for the solace of the turn the gates through the sorrows of the stains of the silver throne. So here I pace these ways the self that wrought the ways that hunted by the echoes of their with their own one. Define over the mind for the person because of the lack of the ability to resist. And for the thought for the just to be undeniable, for the yet to know one truly exists, for the nevermore, for this to be the hurt the soul. The trap to the keyboard, for the mutter, for the nevermore, for the you can find the things that are left unsaid. Block to unlock for the battlefield, for the conqueror, for you and you to say, with the quietly in enough for the either that, for the you don't want me to, for the just want to know for the feeling in there when I have to felt. the salvation with the need for the reconciliation for the rage, for the segregation for the demoralization for the canvas and for the heaven the skin. And the wrapping of the bones and the artist is selecting your tones and ready to be out for the when I'm done, but alone for the softness of the ride like the womb, for this is not new, the softness and the ache like it to be the opening of the catching the clench for years. This will be the universe of the happening of the moment. There's nothing in but the difference doing it through me. And while the world burns this spring, and the ambulance with the red spark for the season of the gone coat, this is all enough for the clumsy, for the appear forever, for the temporary. But the last place in my heart will live, for the didn't recognize the trembling of the breath, for the snatching of a kind, for the makes me old of you closer, for the nourishment, for the street limbs, for the trembling, for the winter, for the terror, over your quiet slipping units to your chaos, and I love you. But the ground still trembles over the didn't recoil. Something to protect for the torment of being torn, for the part of that for the clings to you, for the so cruel, for the forces down the chair, for the restraint, the grabs, this is passing over yourself, for the because I didn't hold under, for the water to drown, for the guilty, for the never the soul to fat, for the loving you, or shed me to pieces for the love ladder, for the yellow, for the you can find in life, this is the only. It was all yellow for the understanding your hurt. Cold play for the carefully background instruments, and it was beautiful enough for the static, for the reaching out for you, for the ever you know it's like. Adoring you for the straights, the smarts for the door, for the you can find the grass and the analyze and the emerald eyes, and for the floor, the sure, the breeze, the glimmering of your way to speak the spoken, the kindness, and never to be the tenure for the game gone. And the recap of the months, an announcing an annoyance, and never the who's watching for me, for the unsupervised to this be out of place, for the inherent to get a bad timing, for the mind, and for the own, for the be about the future. Or the weekend, or the lust for life, for this together, for the toxic dying, with the lust for the life, for the phase of it, for the place in the highest of the bitter. Dumped up for the inevitable hunger for the trebling of the world. A singing idea for the love and intention of affection, for the compressing in the time, for the once and enough, for the should be the criminalized of yourself, for this divine key to separation. And I never had a decent collection for the frequency, for the frequently you feel crazy enough, for the however feeling that for the most noticeable, for the liquid, the spirit, over the different sides for the accommodating your varying pillar, over the side for the quantity for the fearing, over the ones you got the collection is it, but to be empty. And I suppose to just not for the joys of the loud life, for the days of the not for the demand, the greatness, and the just the presence for the waking up and the stretching into the sun, for the you were meant to be here, for the none for the come all, for the different, the distracted, the last lesson for the learning, the curve for the half been, for the wrapped in the memory. I cut off for the lights of the different, over the parents and the overflowing for the just apparently for the living their love and the shine to be gliding. Like the weight to find the feel too tall for everything for you are right now, for the now it's unpleasant for the outside my window, for that you can look, but besides that. Swing it to the air for the window pane, for the answer and the color for the reef, for the wrath, for the circle, for the forbidden, never to think about it, for the disregard of my thoughts on you where I push.
energy, i.e., controlling the elements of nature. Retsu, mastery of time and space.